What's up, guys? We are back. This time we don't have a guest, it's just us three. We're continuing our Cup or Bust series with the Dallas Stars. I know a lot of you guys at this moment are probably thinking, but they're not even in a playoff spot. They're still fighting for a spot, but they do have 3 games in hand compared to Vegas. And we are making a video on Dallas because we're very confident that they're going to be making the playoffs, either over teams like Nashville or Vegas. But we see them clinching a wild card spot. And the reason why we're also making this video is because this is a very interesting situation where, they re-signed Joe Pavelski to a 1-year deal instead of trading him, meaning that they're very confident that they're going to clinch a playoff spot. And they've been playing great hockey this season, better than in past seasons, that's for sure. They've only made the playoffs 4 times in the last 10 years. And what an aging court that they have right now, I think this is the time to kind of somewhat go all in, even though, I mean, their trade deadline, they only acquired Nemestikov and they ended up keeping Klingberg. But yeah, guys. So, what are your thoughts on the Dallas Stars, cup or bust?
I like the Dallas Stars. I think they're one of the more underrated teams in the league. I mean, they've had a really good season this year. But the thing with Dallas, and I think everyone's going to agree with us on this, is that they're kind of an older team. You pay attention to a lot of their core guys, a lot of their main players. Joe Pavelski, he's pretty old. Tyler Seguin's 30 and Ben's 32. But again, they're kind of like declining in their careers already. We've seen it with Seguin and Ben over the last couple of years. And I think that all in all with Dallas, it's kind of like a make it or break it year for them because, again, Joe Pavelski, he's their leading point scorer. And then obviously you got Jason Robertson and Rupe Hintz, who are still relatively young, and you build your team around that. But I think in terms of trying to win a cup, I think you've kind of only got really this year to do it before it's like at least 4 or 5 years out before they do it again or before they try to do it again. And I think they could do it, but I think the thing with Dallas is it's going to be, first of all, they have to make the playoffs. Yes, they have 3 games in hand, but they have to win those games first. And I think the second thing, too, with Dallas is going to be, if they do make the playoffs, is Joe Pavelski and Jason Robertson, who are their 2 leading point scorers at the moment, are they going to be able to lead them to success in the playoffs? And is Jake Ottinger, who, yes, has had a really good season, is he going to be able to stand on his head or be able to, be really good for 4 series in a row? I don't know. So there's a lot of question marks regarding Dallas. And I think that it's definitely going to be interesting to see. I like Dallas. I think they're one of the more underrated teams in the league, like I said. But I think that there's a lot of question marks, and there's question marks here that are big because of the fact that they're in the NHL, but that they're in the fighting for a playoff spot. But I think also because of the fact that the West is so close, that there's a lot of teams that are kind of in the same boat as them. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how this season ends for them, but also how the playoffs go if they do, in fact, make it. So, yeah.
What are your thoughts, Chris?
Well, listen, what I think, like Luca mentioned, I think this year's got to be the year where they've got to at least, well, they got to win. Because, I mean, they're keeping their one of their best defensemen, Klingberg, who I think they should have personally traded during the trade deadline, but they're keeping him as a rental. So I don't know. I think just if you don't win the Stanley Cup and you just lose him for nothing next season, to me it's a bust. Anyway, that's if you trade him, you could get a lot of pieces for your future, which is what they should be thinking of doing.
Well, I think one of the reasons why they kept John Klingberg is because I'll be honest, I think when Dallas started this season, I don't think they expected to be where they are now, right? And I think that already going into this season, they've kind of already exceeded expectations. And, the John Klingberg news comes out that he wants to get traded. And I think that in the end for Dallas, it's like, okay, we've got an opportunity with this guy. We know he wants to get traded. Chances are he probably doesn't come back at the end of the year anyways. So you have a rental. He's already on your team, so it's not a big deal. And he's a guy that can help you go for a playoff run. Do I think John Klingberg wins them a cup? Probably not. But I think he's there in terms of being able to help them go further in the playoffs. And like I said, I think Dallas is a team that is going to be really underrated because, yes, they've got all these question marks, but they're a team that, like, I don't know, they've shocked a few people. I mean, the year they went to the Cup final during the COVID pandemic, nobody expected them to be there, and they went.
Yeah.
And I think that Dallas is one of those teams that can, kind of do that again. They can be that surprise factor. And so I think that yes, it is technically their year if they're trying to go for it. This would be their year in terms of winning a cup for at least in the foreseeable future. But I think even at that, they've got really young pieces to build around as well. Like I mentioned, Ottinger, they've got Rupe Hintz, they've got Jason Robertson. But I think now in terms of
Iskinen as well too.
Heiskanen as well, and I think that's I think right now is their time to really with the guys like Pavelski, with the guys like Sega and Ben, who even though they're not having fantastic seasons or not elite numbers that they're used to producing, they're still doing decently well for them to make it for a cup run. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what Dallas does.
You have Alexander Radulov as well. You have Ryan Suter on that team. These guys are all past their prime. These
Yeah.
guys are in their mid 30s right now or late 30s. Ben is not the same player he once was. He's more of a grinder at this point in his career. Tyler Seguin, with him being out, I think it was all of last year, or was it the year
Yeah,
before that?
I think it was
Um,
all of last year.
yeah, after getting surgery and stuff, he comes back and he's far from the player that he was before he got injured long term. Klingberg wants out. Pavelski, they signed him to a 1 year deal, but I mean, he is 37. It looks like he's aging like wine, which is fantastic. He's the best player on that team, but he's going to be 38 next season, probably playing his last season in the NHL if he decides to. Um, you know, I just look at this team, there's a lot more like depth
It's
on this team.
it's the contracts that scare me. Okay,
Yeah, it's not only that. Like,
Tyler Seguin is going to be signed until he's 36, and same thing for Jamie Benn. And we're not talking about like $5-6 million contracts here. We're talking about close to $10 million for both of them. So it's scary. And then plus you have Ryan Suter until he's 40 playing on your team.
Ryan
It
Suter's
is
had a
three,
re-
it is three
Ryan
point
Suter's had a
six
good
million
year in Detroit.
dollars. Yeah, good year, but he's gonna keep that up until he's 40. I don't think so.
I don't know.
like I'm looking at the team. You have Glenn Denning. You have Hakapanka. You have Hanley, Sakara, Harley, Stunich, Faska, Pedersen, Lindell.
It's a very
Nemestikov.
vet heavy team.
It's a very heavy team, a very old team. And apart from that first line, if Sege and Ben and Radulov don't step it up like they used to, like a couple years back, this team's not gonna make it past the first round. I'm a heavy believer that Vegas is not gonna make the playoffs this year due to all their injuries and so on, and Dallas will be the last team to clinch a playoff spot. They do have games in hand compared to Vegas, and their schedule is a lot easier. But again, in hockey, there's no easy hockey game to win. Sometimes the worst teams beat the best teams. So, I mean, that's in any sport as well. But just looking at this roster, you have Holtby that's out as well, and he's out for the rest of the season. I doubt he even comes back for a playoff run. So let's say if Odinger collapses, what Wedgwood is gonna help you? No, that's not gonna happen unless there's like an Andrew Hammond situation where he's on a hot streak, but during the playoffs instead of the regular season, I just don't see this team going very far in the playoffs. But as a regular season team, they've been pretty impressive. They didn't have the start that they wanted, but the last 2 months they've been on fire, in my opinion. They've really stepped it up, and I think a huge part of why Klingberg didn't want to re-sign, apart from not getting um the contract that he wanted, and they were kind of playing hardball with him, is because he knows that this team is an aging team. This team is gonna be going through a rebuild very soon, and does he really want to be part of a rebuild? You're reaching like your early 30s right now. He's oh my god, why is it not working?
He's in
Bomb
his prime right now.
Yeah, he's supposed to be in his prime right now, and you already have Heiskanen, who kind of like leapfrogged him in terms of like where he's placed in the lineup. So I mean, you already know
Okay.
where the future's headed. So I mean, I don't know, like he's not getting the minutes as well that he normally does, but like yeah, I think he's a fantastic player, but like he's more of an offensive defenseman than a defensive defenseman, and I don't know how far a guy like Klingberg is able to take you in the playoffs in
Well,
terms of defensemen. And yeah, so like my prediction essentially would be that this team busts in the playoffs unless, like Luca was saying, they go on this miracle run like they did in the bubble a couple years ago. and they surprised the hockey
You know,
world. But
you know who
I
they
don't know.
remind me of? The COVID bubble Vancouver Canucks. The reason why I think they remind me a lot of them is because Vancouver, they made it into the playoffs, and there was a lot of talk about them as a team, being not really being the best team there, and that they were kind of reliant on their goaltender. And I'm not saying that Dallas is reliant on their goaltender, but I'm saying that Jake Ottinger this season has played really, really, really well. In fact, he's been probably one of the more underrated goalies in the league, and he's played really, really good. I think that with Dallas, it's going to be dependent on a couple of things. I think their decor is really good. And Esa Lindell's currently out right now. If he is back before the playoffs start or a little bit before that, they're going to be okay there because then they have a top four that's good. My concern is going to be putting the puck in the net. And the reason why I say that is because you look at Dallas's team on paper, right? And you look at their stats and where they are. They're 20th in the league in goals forward, right? They're 10th.
It's an average team on paper.
They're
Nothing
14th
special.
and they're 14th in the league on goals against. So they're middle of the pack for goals against, but for goals forward, they're 20th in the league. And Dallas, for a long time, have been a team that have struggled to score. And you can turn around and say, oh, they've got Robertson this year and they've got Rupe Hintz. Yeah, you're right. But the thing is that you're kind of like, Robertson's at 32 goals, Hintz is at 30, and Pavelski's at 25. That's good. And then you got Sergei and Ben hitting 20. But I think that in terms of where they are, they have no depth goal scoring. Apart from those 5 guys that I mentioned, their next highest guy with goals is Jacob Peterson, who's 22 and has 17 points. And I think that's the biggest thing. In the playoffs, yes, your top-heavy guys need to be your top-heavy guys, and they need to be the guys that perform. But you also need to have depth. And if you don't have playoff depth, and if you don't have guys secondary scoring from guys on your third and fourth line, you're going to have struggles being able to compete against a team like Colorado, against a team like Calgary, against a team like, maybe LA, because these teams, and especially Colorado and Calgary, they're a top-heavy team, but they have a lot of depth players. And so I think for Dallas, it's going to be whether or not their depth is going to be able to help them. And I think, look, if they go into a 7-game series against the Colorado Avalanche, let's say,
Good luck.
I don't know if with the team that they have and comparing the two on paper, and obviously Colorado is the best team in the league, but I'm saying looking at their depth, I don't know if Dallas is going to be able to keep up with a team like Colorado. And that's what's kind of worries me about Dallas is that, yeah, I think they could make the playoffs, but it's going to be whether or not they're going to be able to hold up against Colorado or Calgary. If they can do that, then yeah, I think they're an
Anything is
underdog.
possible. I mean, at that point on.
I think it's good. Like you mentioned, a guy like Radulov, even a guy like Vladislav Nemesnikov, or a guy like Radek Faksa, these Yoel Kiviranta, like these guys who are depth guys, play third, fourth line minutes. These guys need to step up and wake up and actually put the puck in the net. And it's going to be those guys that they're going to be relying on because let's be honest, Colorado's going to know that Joe Pavelski is going to play 20 minutes a night. And Colorado knows that your best player is Jason Robertson, right? So, and you've got Kyle McCarr there. So you've got to kind of be careful with how you go about it, especially a team like Colorado and Calgary too, who's very defensively minded. It's going to be your depth that's going to have to get you through that series. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how Dallas does this. That's why I think they're going to be busts in the playoffs. I just don't think that with the team that they have,
they're a one-line team essentially. Shut down that one line.
Not to mention their goalies too. I mean,
no, their goalies are good.
Well, I mean, if one goes down, I mean, there's the whole operation.
Oh, if Ottinger gets injured,
yeah,
because if Hopi is not back for playoff time because he's done for the rest of the regular season, and they have
Yeah.
Wedgwood.
Well, I mean, then again, there's Khudobin. But...
Yeah, but if yeah, and I mean, look, Khudobin
isn't Khudobin done for the season as well? He had a surgery.
I have no idea.
I'm not aware of it that he had an injury. I thought they just got rid of him, like sent him down.
They sent him down. He's been playing in the AHL, but he has a season-ending injury, and I think he got surgery, if I'm not mistaken. That's why they got Wedgwood because
you're right. You're right.
Because I'm pretty sure that if Holtby's out for the rest of the season, right?
You're right. He's out.
So if he's
out,
then
they're in that case they're really screwed.
Yeah. So like Holtby's out for the rest of the season. So if anything, they would have called up Khudobin. But if Khudobin's out too, then they're screwed, right?
And
So they
I
had to
think
go get a good goal. I mean, a decent goalie in Wedgwood. And if you look at their trade deadline as well, they gave up nearly nothing for Nemestikov. They nearly gave up nothing for Wedgwood. So that is an indicator that this team knows what type of team they are, and they're gonna gun it with the team that they have right now because they know that if they don't win this year, there's gonna be a lot of changes coming for the Dallas Stars during the off season because of the
well, I think
contracts that they have, the aging players, and they're gonna have to build around, like Luca was saying, around Hintz, Heiskanen, and Robertson.
but I think Dallas knows. Like I think, like you mentioned, right? Dallas is aware that John Klingberg is not coming back. I mean, I think we all know that. We all like. I think we're all
There's rumors that
pretty.
they tried trading Radulov
But
too.
but this is the point that I'm trying to make is if you're Dallas, right? You already know that John Klingberg after this year is done, unless they win the cup. But even at that, I don't know.
You know what? More
We
money
already
is
know. You
still
already know. You already know that John Klingberg's leaving. So for Dallas, they've already essentially accepted the fact that they're going to lose John Klingberg for nothing. So you have to kind of make the best of this playoff run. It's a question of like trying to go out there and really like surprise people. Let's be honest. Nobody's like in the NHL bracket unless you're like crazy. I don't think anybody's putting Dallas to win the cup. But it's not about whether Dallas wins the cup or not. I think it's more of a situation where it's like, yes, I know we're doing a cup or buzz video, but what I'm trying to say is I think for me it's impressive if Dallas goes like 2 rounds, 3 rounds. If they do that, then you can turn around and have a different conversation of okay, how do you
it's
improve this?
impressive that they're gonna make the playoffs because you look at
That too.
you look at Vegas,
Yeah, that
who
too.
everyone had making the playoffs. Even I would even say the Vancouver Canucks, who had a fairly disappointing season as well. Those two teams would have been, in my eyes, the wild card teams this year. Not Nashville, not LA, and not freaking Dallas, right? And in this scenario, in the timeline that we're living in, okay, we have LA who surprised the hockey world and is second in their division. You have Nashville who, everyone thought that Duchesne and Johansson were finished and they were not worth their
You
contract.
see,
They're killing it this year. And
I
then
know
you
we're
have
gonna
Vegas, for example, who has one of the best teams on paper, yet they're struggling due to injuries and so on, right? So, I mean, Dallas is being saved by goaltending essentially. Their solid defense and that
understand.
one line of Pavelski, Hintz, and Robertson. It's
But
as clear as day.
But what I like that you brought about Nashville, I know we're going to talk about Nashville later on, like in the future. But I'm saying just one thing I want to say about Nashville: if Dallas could get the same production or similar production from Sega and Ben. Now I know Sega and Ben, you can look at their stats and say, oh, but 41 points in 67 games and 40.68 games is not bad. You're right, it's not bad, but for Jamie Benn, or actually more like Tyler Seguin, because Jamie Benn over the last couple of years has really declined. But I'm saying Tyler Seguin's standard and where Tyler Seguin was 2-3 years ago, that's not that great. Yes, I know he just finished having surgery. So I think if Tyler Seguin can refine his elite form that we all know Tyler Seguin is capable of having, I think Dallas can definitely do something in the playoffs. But it's going to be whether or not those two guys are going to be able to, produce at a high level
Exactly.
again. And also, you know what you're getting from Robertson and you know what you're getting from Hintz. I'm not worried about those guys. I'm worried about, like I mentioned, the depth. And like Chris mentioned as well, if Ottinger goes down, they're screwed anyways. So, like, it doesn't
Yeah. So
really
we could
matter.
all agree that unless their depth wakes up, particularly like Radulov, Seguin, Ben,
That's not really the depth. That's actually those are the
those
guys.
those guys
Yeah.
are supposed to be the core guys, but they're
Yeah.
putting as depth players currently because
Well,
they're
they're
being
they're more like
inconsistent there.
secondary core guys because the
Yeah.
core
Yeah.
guys now
Yeah,
are Hintz and
there's been a
Robertson.
shift basically. They're not
Yeah,
the core guys anymore because unfortunately they kind of fell out of favor because of how they've been playing. So unless it's
yeah,
a miracle, don't expect the Dallas Stars to go that far.
sure.
And we wish them nothing but good luck. And for the fan base as well, you guys haven't won since '99, so hopefully they could win sometime soon. And I think a rebuild would be very beneficial for you guys, building around Hintz and Robertson and Heiskanen. But anything is possible when it comes playoff time. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. And we're going to be making our next Cup or Bust video on the Colorado Avalanche, a team that we're very excited to talk about, a team that we have a lot of things to say up. And we'll see you on the next episode. So thank you so much. Until the next episode, guys.